All right, so this week we're talking about side control. Control and side control on top, pinning our partner, how we pin our partner, our best position to pin our partner, and then a couple options from side control. We're going to look at our Americana sub, and we're going to look at also progressing to a stronger position from side control, which is mount. Side control just means controlling the guy from the side. Usually that happens off doing a guard pass. So last week and in the last set of videos, we were talking about guard, passing and playing guard. So when I pass the guy's guard, whether I'm doing my outside pass from before, or I was doing my double unders pass. In both these scenarios, I'm going to be on the side of my opponent, trying to control him. This is good in jiu-jitsu and much better for me than it is my opponent. I mean, I can start to use gravity and my weight and pressure driving forward to pin my opponent. And the longer I'm pinning my opponent and controlling them, the easier it's going to be to start progressing to positions where I can attempt to sub him, make him tap out and win the match, or progress to positions where I can start to get to even stronger positions where I'm even more in control, like mount, which is what we'll do next week, or again, there's even more options for subbing and maybe forcing the guy to turn his back, which is going to be our top position we want to get in. Well, when my opponent's on bottom, he can't really do a whole lot apart from try and get his legs back in front of him in his guard. There's a couple subs he can do, you'll learn down the line, but mostly he's going to be in a defensive position and we're in an offensive position. And the longer we're in offensive positions and in cycles of attacking our opponent means he can't attack us, and the more likely we'll be able to open up a submission or a superior position like mount or the back. So our final goal for our position for finishing side control is to be in like a chest pin. So there's going to be two kinds of pins in side control. One where I pin my opponent's hips, so where I'm low by his hips, I've got my elbows locked on both sides and my chest is over his hip. Here it's difficult for him to move his hips, try and move your hips around. I can keep kind of tight, but it's easy for him to move his shoulders and he can maybe sit up and move a bit that way, exactly. And then that's not too bad, and some passes will naturally finish in a hip pin, and some passes will naturally finish in a chest pin. Though overall, I think it's better to always try and go from a hip pin to a chest pin. If I want to control his arms on his head and attack his arms on his head, it's harder from down here because I have to really reach. I can't really get the same grips that I want. So I want to be finishing in a chest pin. So ideally I would have my chest over Edward's chest. I would have a cross face, which just means my arm that's closer to his head is just going under his head like this. My chest is on his chest like this. My elbow and knee are really connected by my cross face arm. My hip is sprawled under his hip on the same side, so I'm on his left side, so my left hip is sprawled like this. And now ideally my left hand is going to have an underhook, which just means my arm is going under his armpit and I'm connecting my hands here with a gable grip. So like a palm-to-palm grip like this. And from here I can put a bit of pressure on the shoulder. And from now, if my opponent just tries to move around, especially if he's doesn't know what he's doing, I'm just in a self-defense situation, move around, if he just tries to flop and move around, it's going to be very difficult for my partner. All right, so that's our end goal position. Okay, so again, I'll show it again from this side and I'll show from the other side so you can see a bit of everything. I have my chest over my partner's chest. I have a cross face, and a cross face is just a grip around my partner's head. It's important when I do my cross face that I can flush around his head. I'm not coming under his arm to grab his head. Because now if he just drives his elbow down, that's just going to separate my arm from controlling his head. So I'm nice and flush, just over the top of the shoulder, grabbing his head, chest to chest, and I have an underhook. With my legs, my knees coming tight to my elbow, and my foot is sprawled out, flat to the mat, I'll show from the other side, and my hip is on his hip. And from here I have a bit of like a right angle situation. I don't want to be like here, where I'm like lying kind of in the same direction as him. You'll see that I kind of turn a bit of a right angle, so I'm kind of on the side. From here I can turn his face ever so slightly and start to put a bit of shoulder pressure and make it uncomfortable for him. All right, show it super quick from the other side. So again, I would be chest to chest. I have a flush cross face, so again, I'm not coming under his arm here to grab. If he drives his elbow down towards the side, that's going to get rid of my arm. So flush cross face. I have an underhook, which you won't be able to see from that side. You'll see that my knee here isn't far away. It's trying to nearly connect to my elbow. And I've got this right leg in this case. My foot sprawled back and flat, and my hip is going on his hip. I should be able to feel his hip bone. You'll see it on a slight, not exactly a right angle, but I'm like turned out to the side. I'm not like this, kind of lying where our heads are facing the same direction. I'm kind of coming out to an angle. One, this makes my position a bit stronger. I can put more weight for him here by driving with my shoulder, and it's easier to connect my knee and my elbow here. So that's our final position we want to end in. There's a bunch of different side controls, but today, what we're looking at that course is finishing this chest to chest pin position. Now, if we did our double unders pass, which we did in the last video, where I came underneath and I smooshed him and I turned the corner, I naturally usually finish with my chest over his chest, and it's very easy to set up this position. But if I did my other pass, like my outside style pass, where I was coming to the side, hand on the hip, pushing on the knee, it's more likely I'm gonna finish in this hip pin position, where I'm just have my knees nice and close to his body, my elbows are locking on either side of his hips, and I'm just nice and tight here. From here, my goal is to go to a chest pin. My first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reach up and grab his head, like this. I'm gonna use this grip to pull myself chest to chest. Now I can come with my underhook, my knee can connect to my elbow, and I can sprawl my hip to control my partner, so if he starts to move around here, it's difficult. Again, what's gonna be very common, especially with guys that know what they're doing, he's gonna be blocking my arm with this hand. So what I'm gonna do is when I'm here and I'm tight, often when I go to reach for his head, he's gonna be blocking my arm. So my goal here is to start trying to swim my arm to the inside. If he wins inside position, i.e. has his arm inside the crook of my arm, and I try to grab his head, it's not gonna work, he can keep me away. So I always wanna be swimming on the inside so I can grab his head nice and flush. So if I was here, for example, and I was nice and tight, and I start to reach for his head and Edward starts defending, I'm moving around, I'm trying to swim and get on the inside for a flush grip. Now I can come chest to chest and control here. What's really important in this position when I go chest to chest is that I get an underhook on my opponent and I don't let my opponent get an underhook on me. Underhooks are super strong in jiu-jitsu, and especially in this position here. If he underhooks me, he's going to be able to hit a very easy underhook escape. So if I'm here and I drive and I let this arm go over the top, and then I go palm to palm, and Edward's able to get under my arm hitting that. It's very easy for him to just drive, do a big bridge with his hips, push with his arm, bump me forward, and then come to his knees. And now he could either start trying to pull my knees out from underneath me to have me back turned into face him, or he could start attacking what we would call turtle, is this position, where he would be trying to take my back, which is really bad for me. Especially if I've done all the work where if he was in, say, close guard, and I broke his close guard, then did a guard pass, and then got all the way up, and then he does that underhook escape on me, all my hard work and pressure I've been putting on my opponent's gonna go in the bin. And again, like I was saying at the start, I want to stay in a cycle of being offensive. If I let him do an underhook escape, most likely he's gonna switch that cycle. He's gonna start attacking me and I'll have to defend. And if I'm defending, it's unlikely I'm gonna be able to sub him and win the match or progress to stronger positions, which is my overall goal. So I want to be keeping in that offensive cycle. So when I'm here, it's really important when I get my cross face, I get a strong underhook. If my opponent starts trying to underhook me here, you'll see that there's a moment here, it might be hard to see in the camera, where he goes to underhook me. You turn your side ever so slightly out, so turn to face the camera a bit under the shoulder. So when he goes for an underhook, there's going to be a moment where I'm here, right? He reaches for an underhook, that there's this like triangle shape here, and you can see there's this, you might not be able to see too well, there's a space here that I'm putting my hand through. That's my same goal, is to swim my hand into that space. So if we come back a bit, step back, just to make sure everything's in frame. As I come here, and I'm trying to get an underhook, see he's starting to get an underhook on me, there's going to be this space. I'm putting my arm through here. Now, my arm would obviously stay here. This is the prime time for my hand to come to here and make like a swim motion, as if I'm doing a front crawl. And I swim through that space, and then I can reconnect my hands, drive the space, get my knee tight, sprawl on my hip, and again, now if my opponent tries to move around, it's difficult. And I make sure my shoulder really glues to his shoulder here. If I'm up really high like this, and my head's far away from him, yeah, it's easier for him to pummel for an underhook, and I'm gonna have to re-pummel or re-swim for one. So when I'm here, I stay nice and low and tight, my chin can go to his shoulder, and my shoulder rolls tight. So if he tries to get in this space now and get an underhook, it should feel very difficult. But sometimes you might be in that kind of fight for 15, 20, 30 seconds, but you need to be really sticking with it, because if you give up that fight and he gets an underhook on me, he's gonna hit that easy escape and I'm gonna go into that defensive cycle. So when I'm here, and I control, and I start to get underneath, just fight away for an underhook here. I'm going to be swimming. He'll re-swim if he's good, and eventually I'll want to get my strong position. And now when I get nice and tight, now if he tries to re-swim here, he's going to feel like it's difficult and he'll probably go for something else. But every time I swim here, the same thing's happening. I'm making that space, he's making that, and the guys will start doing this, and eventually though, I don't want to give up till I win this. Because if I just keep going to here and I'm like, oh fuck it, I'll let him have an underhook, he's just going to do this big bridge and start again attacking me. And I want to be attacking my opponent. Alright? So, they're kind of our basic pinning positions. If I'm starting in a low pin, my goal is to go to a high pin. He blocks my arm, I swim. Sorry, if he's like, yeah, blocking my arm, I'm swimming to the inside to get a flush grip of his head. Obviously on this side, he's kind of like, not getting an underhook on me, but he's under my elbow. But if he tries to bump me and turn this way with this underhook, all my weight's there. So that's why that doesn't matter. I don't want him to get an underhook on the side I'm trying to get an underhook. So again, I'm trying to swim, get an underhook, connect my hands with my underhook hand being on top, palm to palm, no thumbs involved. I'm bringing my knee to my elbow and I'm sprawling on my hip to hip. I should feel like his hip bone especially. And my chest is covering his chest, I'm coming low, and I can turn his face and make this a wee bit uncomfortable for him. Alright, I'll show on the other side as well, just so we have both sides. I'm in nice and tight, I'm just blocking the hips and I'm low here. So he'll probably be able to move his shoulders here, but he can't probably move his hips. I'm here, I'm looking to go for my underhook. If he's blocking this, I'm looking to swim on the inside and grab his head. This is my anchor and my pulling point, and I use this to pull and go chest to chest. My knee comes in nice and tight, I sprawl on this leg, my hip's on his hip, right on this hip bone, and I get my underhook, which you can't see on this side, but make sure you get an underhook, don't let him get an underhook, and then you come nice and tight and control this chest to chest, and again I use this shoulder and my body weight to just turn his face like. And now here I can sit in this position, and my opponent tries to get away here. Now there obviously is going to be ways for him to escape here, and we'll talk about that down the line. Okay, so for now, we'll scoot back you just this way slightly. Yeah, perfect, Edward, thank you so much. So now we'll talk about two options from side control. We'll talk about one submission from side control, which is an Americana, which is a shoulder lock, very similar to the submission we did in our close guard in the very first lesson, which was a Kimura. Both of those attacks are shoulder locks. And then we'll talk about progressing to a stronger position. Because again, I always want to be either trying to sub my opponent or progress to a stronger position where I have more pinning control and therefore more opportunities to manipulate my opponent's limbs and control them, tire them out, submit them, which will be going to mount, which we'll talk about afterwards. So I'm going to be in that same chest to chest pin position. Cross face, underhook, elbow to knee, sprawl on the hip, chest on chest and low. Edward's doing what's very natural here. If I'm driving a lot of weight and driving here, he doesn't like that. I'm smushing him, it could be uncomfortable. If I'm turning his face here, like that's not fun for him. So he'll probably be framing to try and make space. Especially which we'll cover in the video next week or in the course on the second half of this week. He probably wants to start framing so that he can do a hip escape, make space between us, and then refill that with his legs, like he just did there. Because again, he wants his legs in front of us. So we're back in this position. I've got my strong cross face. He starts to frame against me. I don't want to be eating this forever. See, he's going into my abs handle. It's very uncomfortable for me. So as soon as he lands here, ideally before he really starts spraying hard, we're going to drive using our feet and drive and use our chest and start to drive this arm across. Our goal essentially is to try and get this hand flat to the mat, as if he was like doing a high five to the ceiling. All right, so he's here again. I'm going to drive to here. Now my elbow's going to come, I'm going to disconnect my hands and my elbow's going to come to the other side of his head. In the meantime, my free hand is just holding around his shoulder here. So again, I'm here, I'm going to drive. I'm trying to get this as low as I can. I'm going to disconnect my hand and drive my elbow back against his head to push him a bit further away. Again, I'm going to drive low and get this as low as I can. And then I'm going to swing my hand on the inside and grab the front of his wrist and pin his hand flat to the mat. Again, like he was giving a high five. From here, I'm going to connect my hand to my wrist here. So I'm going for this double wrist grip. I'm holding his wrist. I'm going to invert my hand. So I'm probably looking at the flat of my hand here. I'm going to turn it so I'm looking at the back of my hand. And I'm going to grab around where my watch would be. So I'm here, I grab my watch. From here, I can just put on my submission, which this is an Americana shoulder lock. I can keep his hand flat on the mat. I'm going to lift through this elbow, imagining that this is like the hand of a clock. So it's currently pointing at 9 o'clock. I'm going to start pointing it so it points to the roof at 12 o'clock. I want to make sure I keep his hand flat on the mat when I do this. So it's like a paintbrush. I can lift and submit my opponent like that. What's going to make this stronger is pulling his elbow tight to his hip. And now from here when I lift, I'm going to get a much quicker tap. Essentially what's happening there, I'll demo kind of what's happening, is when his shoulder's here, you can see that I have a lot more ability to like rotate, especially with my elbow coming forward and my wrist coming back. You can even do this if you're watching the video to get an idea. There's a lot more rotation in my shoulder. Again, there's still not loads of rotation if he puts me further than this. See how my arm, my back has to move backwards to facilitate that. But if I just bring my elbows low to my side now like this, and now try to rotate, there's very little movement. Again, here's that amount of movement. It's probably a very weird looking dance if you're just watching this. And then if you come down, it's going to be very limited. So when I get to the same position, I'm here. Strong side control position. He frames. I drive my weight across. My arm comes across to the other side of his head. My elbow pulls his head back. I get this as low as possible. I pummel on the inside and I grab the front of his wrist and I pin it so his hand's flat on the mat like it's giving a high five. So it should be palm up. And I'm trying to cover the flat of his wrist. Try not to let his wrist start turning on the side here. I really want it to be super flat. I come underneath and grab the front of my own wristwatch strap, where that would be. I keep his hand flat on the mat. Again, I could go for my finish here, where I act as if his hand is like the brush part of a paintbrush, and I lift this and brush his hand across the mat to go for a finish. But it's going to be stronger if I pull his elbow as close as I can to his hip. He's nearly tapping already because I can tell this is really tight. And then the amount of movement I need will be much less. See, that was like coming off the mat that much compared to this. Like this. A couple of mistakes a lot of guys make is they'll start to lift the hand off and do this. As soon as I start to lift the hand off, one, he has more ability to rotate here. See that? Compared to if I keep his arm flat. Even more if I keep his arm flat here. So it's all about the amount of movement and rotation he is comfortable with in his shoulder. And if I lift up, he's going to have more movement. The other issue is if I lift up and I'm not driving his hand against the mat, it's really easy for him to punch your arm straight. And then it's gone. Now, not to say I couldn't potentially chain this into like, punch your arm straight there, a straight arm bar, or if he starts to punch his hand the other way, this is when you could go back to a Kimura style grip. But if I keep his hand flat on the mat and I'm actively pulling in, try and punch your arm straight, it's pretty much impossible. But as soon as I lift this up, punch your arm straight, it's very hard to control. So make sure you're keeping the back of his hand on the mat at all times. And then when I pull in, that's really strong. Again, here I can still get a finish, but ideally I'll pull in. But if I start to lift this towards me and now start trying to do it, not only is it harder to finish, he's going to have more opportunities to punch his arm straight. And because it's harder to finish, he's going to be here for longer. Especially if the guy's bigger and stronger than me. He's just going to muscle out of this or start like pulling his elbow away or turning and pushing him against my face. The other thing is make sure you come under the elbow. Sometimes guys will come here over the wrist. Same thing, I'm not controlling his elbow in any way, so there's no pressure here. Again, he can just pull his elbow tight or punch his arm straight. Alright? The other thing we're going to talk about is going to mount from this position. We're going to go into a position that's called reverse scarf hold or reverse kasagatami, depending on who you ask. Exact same setup. We're going to do the exact same pinning mechanics. So I'm here, pinning, he's framing across my head. Maybe I feel like it's tough to get this hand. I'm struggling to drive his hand on the mat, especially if the guy is way bigger than me or stronger. Like trying to drive here, if he's really framing, it's a bit later in the frame. So he's really pushing against me. I feel like I can't turn into that. The thing that beats frames, again, a frame is just something that absorbs or exerts force. In this case, it's absorbing the force as I drive down. He's able to hold me down. Or he can exert force by driving that into me, and it's very uncomfortable. The thing that beats frames is changing my angle. Because again, currently his frame works because his arm's loaded here. If I push down, push back, like this. So if I just try and fight that the whole time, it's very difficult. So the thing that's going to change that is changing my angle. If he was pushing up and then I pushed him that way, that would beat it. So when I'm here again, he's going to frame across. I'm going to bring my arm back across the head and I'm going to look towards his legs and sit on my right hip and face his feet like this. So now if he frames against me, he's kind of not really doing anything. It's not very uncomfortable. I'm looking towards his legs. My inside leg is going to be tight against him and I'm going to have my other back leg away as if I was kicking a football. I'll show it from the other side as well, so you'll see what's happening with the legs. From here, it doesn't really matter too much if I'm over the shoulder here or in the armpit. It's the same idea. What's important though is that I bring this arm on the other side of his head, because if he tries to try and lift his shoulder off the mat and turn into me, that's going to be very difficult. If I do this position but my arm's still on this side of his head, now he's going to be able to turn into me and push me away and start to bridge, either bring his legs back in, or if I'm not ready, he might just knock me the whole way over. And I get reversed here, which again, I don't want to happen. Just scoot your head back a wee bit there, please. Perfect, so same idea. I'm in here, he's framing, I switch, I look towards his leg, and I'm going to go from being like flat with both my hips facing the mat to just going on my right hip, and my left hip is like facing the sky, so I'm like stacked. My right leg's going to go tight against him, and my left leg comes back. As if I'm kicking a football. I'm going to show this without ever being there in a wee second. From here, I can cup his far leg, pull it towards me. If I need to, I can back my bottom leg away if I feel like his legs are going to land on me. And then I can just step over the mat, put both my knees on the mat, and then I'm in a strong mat position from here. I'll show on the other side, just that way, a wee couple of steps. Perfect. So I'm in the same position here. You're mostly just going to see the leg work here, guys. So again, I'm here, he's framing, my arm switches to the other side, and I go from like both my hips facing the mat to changing, so my hip that's closest to his head switches. You see that my hips are now stacked vertically. And with my legs, one leg's coming, bottom leg is coming tight towards him, so if I'm on my left hip, my left leg is coming tight towards him. And my right leg comes back. As if I was ready to like kick a football, scissor my legs. I pull on his furthest away knee, pull it towards me. If I feel like his leg's going to land on me, like the kind on here, I can just scoot my hip back, step over, and both my knees come to the mat, and now I'm in mount. If it was jiu-jitsu, now I could start attacking his collars, or pinning his arms, or if it was like MMA or self-defense, this is obviously where you punch the guy in the head, like a whole load. One last time from this side as well. He's framing, I switch my angle and look for the legs. The reason I pull on the far leg is that if I pull on the bottom leg and I step, often I can get caught in between his legs. He pinches his knees together, and now this is called half guard, and it can be difficult to get out of here if I don't know what I'm doing. But if I pull this top leg, it knocks his bottom legs together and pins his legs and his knees together. So if he tries to open his legs and catch my foot, it's very difficult. So again, I'm here, pull on the bottom leg, step over, turn in the mat. One last time from this side, and then that'll be us. Scoot that way. I got my cross face, I'm in my strong chest pin, cross face, underhook, knee here. He's framing, and I feel like I can't drive this to the mat. You can tell that that's uncomfortable for me because my voice is going off on me. I'm bringing my elbow across, angles beat frame, so I change my angle, I fall into my hip. I bring my leg nice and close, my other leg back, stepping. The good thing about bringing this leg back is bring your toes on the mat, so if the guy does try to do a big bridge into me here, I can push off that toe to stop him. I pull both of his legs towards me, I step over and come to mat. One last thing I'll say is, especially in jiu-jitsu when you learn more techniques, the best thing to do is to take the path of least resistance and to try and feed the techniques you know into other techniques you know. So in this situation, for example, say I was here and I start trying to do my Americana and I get to here and the guy's really defending this arm right away and I feel like I can't get it like this. That's going to be the best time to step him up, or a good time to step him up. Because he's going to be distracted. We're not doing the perfect setup, which is pulling his knees and doing this. But one, perfect is the killer of good, as they say. And the other is that he's distracted. He's worried about what's happening with his arm. So even though I maybe don't have the best angle, I could quickly switch and I could step over. Same thing if I'm here and he was like worried that I was going to step over and he's driving with his hand. It might be a good time to force and get his hand on the mat and then go for my finish here. So again, today, guys, we were talking about pinning the hips, how we pin the hips, how we get our regular chest pin, the important things of controlling the head flush, pummeling, what if he tries to, stop this head position and we can swim on the inside, and the importance of getting our underhook to avoid him bumping us. And then we talked about two different things, a submission and a positional, essentially like level up or step up in positional control, which was our Americana, and then step into that. Great stuff. On the next video and in the next session, we'll talk about what to do on bottom, how we do both that underhook escape that Edward did, and also my goal of trying to get my legs back in front of me by re-guarding, which usually involves framing, hip escaping away, and then putting my knees back in front of my partner where I can play an open guard or closed guard position. Great stuff today, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much as well, Andrew. You're a gentleman.
Well, as always.